you were talking about the distinction between the script that is written, the script that is shot, and the script that is edited.
And boy, oh boy, it's quite a journey from one to the other. How do we begin, Jorg?
Well, Alex first discovered the book, which many had discovered before, but she discovered in the context of making a movie out of it, so she still discovered something, right?
I told you to read it.
Yeah, and then Alex adapted the book, which is a collection of short stories, essentially, into something that has a single narrative, in a sense, and more of a backstory, or one that is clearly delineated in the film. And so, the script evolved greatly over the years, depending on where we're going to shoot it, who we're going to shoot it with, what casting decisions we'd had, what budgetary yeah.
It is a big factor.
Oh, a huge factor. I mean, we had to cut a lot due to budgetary restrictions. And then we shot it all. And I'm happy to say that we actually kept everything except one day of shooting in the film.
Or was it one morning? Do you mean the breakfast scene?
Oh, God.
Yes. So, obviously, as indie filmmakers...
You will never see that as a deleted scene in anything.
No, you will not.
It was that interesting.
We try and get the cast that we can get. And one of the things that is wonderful is if you can rehearse. And sometimes the gatekeepers, the wonderful agents of actors, do not release the actors because, for various reasons, basically greed. It's not always conducive to release the actor. I've never met an actor that didn't want to rehearse.
But we've met many agents that don't want their actors to rehearse.
Right. So the most important thing that we learned is when you get the actor that you want, is to make, once that deal is done, as soon as that deal is done, you make contact with the actor directly. Ideally, you've met them before and they've read, but you make contact and you really get them on side for rehearsals, because chances are they'll really want to do it. Now, when this doesn't happen, and you have things can happen on a set, obviously, and time can run out. Sometimes you don't get the coverage you want of a scene for whatever reason, and that can really affect the script that you started with versus the what you get in the can, and then, of course, what you have to edit from. So in our film, there was one particular sequence that was written as 15 pages and with a lot of dialogue. And the dialogue was the only place in the script where quite a lot of, it was a key point where the boy really discovered a lot about the world he was living in, basically about how the society functioned. And it was written as a very, very long scene, and there were a lot of diatribes in the scene. There was a lot of, not exposition at all, but confrontation. And in the end, for various reasons, we couldn't get it in the can. So we knew we had to make very, very snap decisions, didn't we, about cuts that we had to do and improvisations that we had to do in order to get enough for the scene to work. And that was very much, I suppose, on one level it's fun, and on another level it's a total nightmare, because the pressure is there, and because ultimately you have to know what your story is at all times, don't you? And you have to figure it out.
Yeah,
Should
because
you
when
use text,
but when you're working with a film which is heavily conceptual in nature and involves backstory and things, it's quite, and then also has quite a lot of effects. There's one thing that people will not necessarily realize about The White King is that there's actually a lot of VFX work happening at many points in the film, and which is surprising for a film of that small budget. But we've done a lot of effects work. There's a lot of set extensions. There's a lot of scenes where we stitch things together out of different frame shots and takes, and so there's in many of those sequences there's very little room for improvisation. You need to make sure that those things are pretty much locked in before you shoot them, and that wasn't always the case when we made this film. Well, it was the case. We thought we'd done all the planning. We thought we'd had as much of the rehearsing as we could, etc. But then
there are factors beyond one's control.
There are factors beyond one's control.
We can't go into too much more detail, but only know that a 15-minute sequence on the page became a 4-minute.
6 word, yeah.
I think 4-minute sequence in the can, and it does serve the story.
And so this was it became 6 minutes, not on the editing table necessarily. It was already during the shoot. We had already cut it down severely, so on the set. And then when we edited it, we had to cut even more out of that scene. So yes, it is a script will always continue changing and evolving.
And one thing I can really deduce from that, though, is that it was incredibly helpful for us to be a director duo in a situation like that, where you have a lot of pressure on set, which every director has to deal with, to be able to brainstorm, either with your co-director or your producer partner, your creative partner, was very good, wasn't it? I mean, if we hadn't had that, it could have been
also having not made a feature before, it was incredibly useful. I mean, I think we watched Spy the other day, Paul Feig's Spy, which was oddly enough also shot in Hungary. And I was incredibly impressed, and all the actors talk about a lot about how improvisational or how flexible Paul is on the set, and how when he hears a certain line, he will come up with another one, and he will rewrite throughout making these. That is a $65 million movie, so and he keeps his cool throughout, and his top hat and his walking stick. So he's so I think hopefully we can all be more like Paul one day.
It would be lovely. It would be lovely. That's the goal.
So Spy, very, very different movie from White King, but I highly recommend it because it's great fun.